From the Side podcast is delighted to be supported by our two main podcast sponsors, Fields Joinery and AFC Knowsley. Fields Joinery is one of the arms of the Fields Property Group, and whether you are a commercial or a residential customer, no job is too small for these guys. If you are watching on YouTube, all of their social and website links are on the screen now. However, if you are an audio-only listener of the podcast, do head over to fieldspropertygroup.co.uk. That's fieldspropertygroup.co.uk. This is where you can find all of their social links and get in touch if you do need any work doing. Do not forget, no job is too small for these guys, and we would like to thank Fields Joinery for sponsoring the podcast from day one, because it really does go a long way. We'd also like to thank AFC Knowsley for sponsoring the podcast. AFC Knowsley is a fantastic grassroots football club which has teams ranging from age 6 all the way up to the first team, including a disability team and a women's football team also. All teams play out at the Lord Derby Pavilion in Huyton, which is a £1.6 million complex, which is a fantastic addition to the grassroots football scene within this city. AFC Knowsley have also been kind enough to allow us to use their facilities to continue recording our podcasts on a weekly basis with all of our fantastic guests. I think you'll agree they look absolutely fantastic on camera and they're even better in person. So if you do have a spare weekend, do get down to the Lord Derby Pavilion and support this fantastic local grassroots football club. If you are watching on YouTube, all of their social and website links are on the screen now. However, if you are an audio-only listener of the podcast, do head over to afcknowsley.co.uk. That's afcknowsley.co.uk. From the Side podcast, we'd like to extend its thanks again to Fields Joinery and AFC Knowsley for supporting the podcast from day one. It really does go a long way, and we hope that you enjoyed the episode. Hello and welcome into the From the Side podcast in our new home of AFC Knowsley. So we'd like to thank AFC Knowsley for being one of the main sponsors of this podcast alongside Fields Joinery. We're going to be seeing a lot more of us within this little setup, which is quite cool. And it's me, Matty and Jay. And as always, Jay, you can introduce our guest.
So just to introduce him, Dave McNabb, formerly of Rylands. Nice one for coming on, Dave.
Nice one, mate. Nice one for having me.
So we always start off, and the first question always is, to be fair, how did you get involved in coaching? So was it back when you were younger, or did you just fall into it, or was it always the plan, or what?
I don't think it was ever planned. It was more around wanting to stay in the game, obviously playing, coming towards an end, getting a little bit old, a little bit fatter, a little bit worse. I was at Witness at the time, and a fellow called Stevie Hill was the manager. No longer with us, unfortunately, Stevie, but he was probably the best coach I've ever had. And he made me look, as an experienced player at the time, he made me look at the game in a little bit different way. Start to understand it a little bit more around shapes and strategies and identities and stuff, and I think that's what gave me a little bit of buzz to get into coaching and management.
Yeah.
And then from there went into grassroots and then into non-league.
Did it just start off? Tell us what your coaching journey then from the start before you got to Rylands.
So I was doing little bits and pieces at Witness at the time. We were in the North West Counties in the first division, and then obviously
that with the first team or with the kids?
Yeah, with the first team, yeah. And then I went back and moved to play for Ford Motors in the Cheshire League. Did a little bit of coaching there, into Rainhill, again mainly as a player. And then the first team manager resigned, and the reserve team manager, Phil Byrne at the time, stepped up to the first team and got a call off the chairman from Rainhill, and basically said that Phil had said he should be the manager for the reserves. So I took over the reserves, a sort of player manager at the time, which was good because it almost bridged that gap between obviously ending your playing days and getting into the coaching and management side. And we had a decent side as well at the time. We were in the Cheshire League 3rd division, won the league that year. And then from there I went on to Billings, where I was doing my UEFA B sort of coaching, and moved into Billings in the Cheshire Prem. And then we finished the season quite well, and then the Rylands call came and moved over to Rylands, and obviously had really 4 really good years there.
Yeah. When you first started, so you say like was it just like helping out and just stuff like with Witness? Was it then that you thought, yeah, I'm going to get involved in this? This is something that I want to do long term.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like a lot of Steve's sessions were really structured in terms of a lot of the stuff that we do now, or we did at Rylands, and sort of later on the coaching journey. obviously when you start doing that yourself, you get the size of the pitch wrong, you get like the restrictions wrong, or the certain elements of the session, and obviously you learn from them. I don't think that you can have a bad session in coaching. Obviously we've all had nightmares where it sort of felt a little bit, and you can see the players' faces turning a little bit, and that's when you know that sometimes the best thing to do is just stop it and reassess and get back going. But yeah, it was almost like that buzz of trying to improve people, trying to help people out, trying to help them on their journey as a player. But the management side was always the bit that interested me the most, more than the coaching.
Because there is like a massive difference, isn't it, between coaching and managing?
Yeah, it is. And look, I don't think one's necessarily less or more than the other. I think it's just where your skill set lies and what it is you want to do. Yeah. I've met some fabulous coaches along the way, and some people who are fantastic coaches, but they're probably not made to be managers, and vice versa. There's some great managers out there, and get them on a coaching pitch, they're not the best. And I'd probably put myself in that bracket. I don't mind coaching, but I don't get massive enjoyment out of it. You come across these coaches who they love and breathe for it and live for it, but I'm not really that type. I will coach and I'm happy to coach, but I don't get massive love from it.
You're more just happy, just like standing back and observing and stuff like that.
Yeah, so a lot of the way we used to work was obviously all the sessions be planned. They'd always have to have an objective, always be around the identity that we wanted to sort of portray on the Saturday. So a lot of the planning, that's where I got involved, mostly around the planning of the sessions up front, and then obviously assessing on how successful they were at the back end. But a lot of the time, certainly at Rylands, I let the coaches coach.
Speaking on Rylands then, what was it like when you got the call from them? Because obviously massive club, had a good project. What was that like, getting the call off them? Yeah,
it was a tough decision really at the time, because I hadn't been at Billings long, and I really enjoyed it. We just won the Guardian Cup, the Warrington Guardian Cup. We'd finished 3rd or 4th in the league, but we finished the league very strong, and the plan was we were going to stay there for the following season. But then obviously the opportunity came up at Rylands, and they'd just been promoted, and Rylands were in the same league as Billings. Billings, as I said, finished 3rd or 4th, I think it was, and then Rylands had finished sort of 11th in that season, but been promoted by the fact that they had planning permission for the lights and the ground improvements. So it was almost like a chance to step into non-league, and I just thought to myself, even though I'm probably going to put myself out of my comfort zone a little bit, that's where I want to try and be and try and test myself and push myself. So it just sort of seemed to fall into place. I first went in with one of my good mates, a lad called Stu Wellstead. He was coming to the end of his playing career. He just won the county's prem with Runcorn Linnets, and he came in and we sort of did joint manager. He was still playing at the time as well, so he was almost like the first signing, which was a good start, because he's a 30 goal a year striker. So
sorry, just choked. What's it like when you, like, with that, because obviously you're at Billings, what's the process behind that? So did he call you first, or have you got to speak to the club first? Because obviously higher up the pyramid you've got to obviously get permission to speak to someone, but is it like that further down, or would they just...
I think it does normally work like that. In this circumstance, it was almost, obviously Stuart had the initial conversations with Rylands around coming in. I think he was obviously a little bit conscious that if he still wanted to play, it's a tough task to do both at the same time. He's never had any management or real coaching experience either. So he gave me a call and he said, "Would you be interested?" And I said, "Well, be interested." Initially, I said no, and then he phoned back a couple more times. Said, "Right, okay, let's have a chat and let's sit down with them." So
fucking peer pressure,
basically, yeah. So we went down and obviously met the chairman and the committee it was at the time. Obviously got blasted for an hour or so with questions and whatever else, and there was a little bit of a needle because we played against Rylands in the cup, and we'd actually played an ineligible player, and he scored, and we went on to win the cup. So we beat them in the semi-final and went on to win the cup. So there was a few questions about
when you walked in.
A couple of questions about cheating and our way to the sort of cup final. But
did you have to like put like a presentation together or anything like that to say like this is how we want to play, or this is what?
No, it was quite relaxed, to be honest. They did ask around style of play and what it is we were looking for and what they thought we could achieve, and obviously the questions around budgets and that type of stuff. But yeah, it was quite relaxed. like so you always feel nervous, don't you, going in for like any type of interview, anything that you want to try and achieve, you're always going to have an element of nerves, which is good. But yeah, once we got in there, we settled quite quick, and it was just about trying to put our ideas across to the club, and particularly the chairman and the board at the time, and obviously we got the green light to go and give it a go. And
so you obviously get, as you said, then you get the green light. When you go to the first training session, and you do obviously the session and stuff like that. Did your plans change like instantly, or was it always everything flow?
No, it was a tough one, because like I said, they'd finished, I think it was 11th out of 14 teams in the Cheshire League, so clearly a step up to the counties. The current playing group, on the face of it, weren't good enough to go and try and then compete in the league above. Yeah. It's simple as that. It's not always quite that simple. Obviously, with players, you can obviously get a little bit more out of them. But on the face of it, we knew we'd have to make some changes. But we wanted to give the lads a chance. There might have been a couple of players in there who were good enough and to stay with us long term. So we obviously had a meeting with the current group and said, look, you'll all get your chance. Training starts on such a date, and a few of them turned up, not many. So the first training session was a bit of a car crash. We brought a few lads there, but we didn't have many. Yeah. The club didn't give us any balls. We had no training equipment. Luckily, I had a few bits in my car from when obviously coaching at Raynhill and Billings. So it was a tough start. It was like welcome to the real world. You know what I mean? You've got to get out there and sort your own sort of stuff out and move things forward. But we always had plans clear plans in terms of what we wanted to play, what type of shape and what type of team we wanted to be. So we targeted players, we brought some really good lads in, and the way that we sort of approached it, because the budget was, I know people talk about Rylands and money and stuff, but the budget was really small. It was 250 quid a week all in. Yeah. So lads were on 15 quid, you know what I mean, and 20 quid, and then if they were sat on the bench, you'd get an half. It was embarrassing at times, giving lads £7.50 in an envelope, you know what I mean, the envelope's fucking rattling and that, but that's where we were as a club, and these things probably made it sort of a lot of the learning experience along the way, made you what you are now. Yeah. So we brought lads in groups of sort of 2 or 3 from different clubs from in around the West Cheshire and the Cheshire and the Liverpool County Prem, and that's how we sort of brought the squad together for that first year.
Do you reckon you still would have went to Rylands then if Billings would have went up as well?
I don't know. It's a good question. Possibly not. Because my aspirations, I certainly had no issues with Billings. I was working with a fellow called Jeff Parr, who's a great lad. Got a ton of respect for him, still speak to him now, he's a good lad. And there was no issues at Billings at all, so it wasn't like it was trying to get a new club because I wanted to move on. It was just that step into the counties really that I wanted to try and take and push myself.
You mentioned as well, loads of people talk about the Rylands and the money and stuff like that. Is that something you found going into games and stuff? People thought like, oh, Rylands only doing this because they got all the money behind them and stuff like that.
Yeah, you do, and look, I think sometimes you've got to feed off that. We found ourselves in a position where a lot of people disliked us and didn't really know anything about the club and how it was structured. You lose a game, you're getting comments from fans who support Gateshead, and you think, I've never even played Gateshead. Like, why are you made up? We got beat 3-0, you know what I mean? Like, what's going on here? But look, it's part of the territory. I think there's always going to be people in any walk of life where if you're doing things well, there's always going to be people who will find an excuse for why you're doing it well. There is an element of it where I think it's lazy, you know what I mean? We worked hard, and that's the top and bottom of it. Whether we're any good or not, I don't know. That's for someone else to judge, but we worked our nuts off, you know what I mean? We were going out, we were watching games, we were constantly trying to improve ourselves in terms of the training sessions and how we applied, the structure, the organisation was through the roof. So look, people will always say, oh, it's because you had money or because you had this or because you had the best facilities or whatever it is. People will always try and sort of downscore people a little bit, but there's an element of it. Some of it is probably true, some of it's a little bit lazy, but I know what we did in terms of the amount of effort and work that we put into it.
Yeah. So I've been to Rylands, and it's actually a brilliant setup. Have you been? No. No, I never went like previously. Obviously, Aaron when you were doing well and promotions and stuff. But it's actually a really good setup. But stuff like that doesn't come for free, does it? You've got to put the effort in. No, type of thing.
It doesn't come for free, and it doesn't happen overnight as well. I think obviously on the day that we walked in through the door on the first time, like that summer was horrendous in terms of the heat. The pitch was burnt, it was bone dry. They had 2 dugouts, a little tiny stand on the far side, and that was it. It wasn't anywhere as good as the facility we're in here today. So the pitch was horrendous, and literally the first season it was known as the graveyard. You know what I mean? Get them on the graveyard. We were playing Southport in the cup, and it was like they offered us to move it to their ground. We were like, nah, let's get them on the graveyard. Let's see if they can handle this. But that's what it was. But the facilities have developed massively over time, and I think that's something that obviously the club's achieved massively, and it's not an easy thing to do. Like when you go through planning permission, it's not a case of just being able to go and source funding to the FA and grants and then obviously sponsorship and that type of stuff. It's actually being able to get the legalities and the other things in a row, really, where you can go and get things done.
I know that's what obviously where we are now. The next step is to get the stand and the floodlights in. But I think they're like struggling a little bit with the same type of thing. It's
hard. Look, I think the FA's obviously makes a lot of funding available, whether it's coming from the Premier League or whatever the sources. So it is good. It's just very difficult to tap into because everyone wants it. It's the life soul of the community. A lot of these clubs, and to go and try and get money, you never get it all. You only get a percentage of, normally about 60-70%. You've got to find the rest yourself. So when you're talking about something like a floodlight installation or a stand that might cost you 50 grand, 100 grand, even only finding 30% of it, it's big for a club like this, which is charging lads a fiver to play footy.
Yeah, definitely. What was I going to say? FA Vase then. Take us through the run with that.
So it was a bit of a strange one all in, really. So the season before had obviously been curtailed a little bit early. It was in the sort of March time, I think, or February time. Obviously COVID. So the season had almost been stopped and declared null and void, which was a little bit disappointing for us at the time because I think we were in second. At the point it stopped, we played 28 games, we were in second place, looking at the back-to-back promotions, and it got stopped. And then obviously COVID was in fucking main flight then, so we were a little bit
null and voided, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was null and void. Yeah.
That must have been a killer.
Yeah, it was. I mean, like I said, we were in second place, and it was top 3 go up, and we were thinking, we've got a chance here. So it was disappointing, and then obviously going into the next season, we didn't know whether the season was going to go ahead, whether it was going to start on time, whether it was going to finish late. And I think we probably started back. I think the government allowed us to start back training in June, July, whatever time it was.
Oh, it was on it. So they come out, didn't they, with the fucking rules of you can only train in groups of 6 and you can't be within a certain distance of each other. You can't do it in where there's public art, and you can't do this, you can't do that. And it was like, just let us play football.
Play footy.
Yeah. Been like about 4 months locked in, and then they're coming out and saying you can't do it in more than 6 and all that.
So when we first come back, obviously I think it was probably the longest pre-season in history. It felt like it was about 6 months long, where you just literally passing the ball between 2 of you because you can only do it in pairs initially, and then obviously it got into sort of working it as a full group. So we started the season, I think it was round about September, October time, so it started late. So we played the FA Cup, the FA Vase, first couple of rounds. We had a decent little run, obviously going in the Vase. We played 5 league games, I think we won 4, drew 1. And then we went back into lockdown again.
In November, wasn't it?
Yeah, so we went back into lockdown, I think it was November. And then I think we got told that they were gonna open back up, but they weren't gonna restart the league. So I think it was about March time, wasn't it? End of February, March, basically, that they said, obviously the country's opening back up. The leagues basically said, we're ending all the leagues. I think it was everything from step 3 down, and then step 2 followed suit probably a month or 2 later. Step 1 finished, and obviously the Football League and the Prem finished. But so we'd had basically 3 months off. So we come back for if there was a 2nd or 3rd pre-season of the season. We got the lads back in, different levels of fitness. Obviously some had been doing stuff. We had all the WhatsApp groups, like you got to go and do a 5k run and all that type of stuff, Strava groups, it was that time where it was difficult. You'd have a lad who'd have 1 kettlebell trying to do everything with it, you know what I mean? So the levels of fitness were massively varied across the group. So again, we come back and it was like in little groups of 2 or little groups of 6, and then it was like the full squad. Just trying to sort of build the fitness back up more than anything. We signed a couple of lads on because obviously their seasons had finished, just as backup because obviously with injuries and everything else that was going on. And then I think what made it feel a little bit better is I can almost liken it to like being on an international camp. You know what I mean? Like the World Cup when England go away or whatever, because you couldn't do anything else in your personal life. It was like literally you go to work, you come home, and we were allowed to go and play footy. Yeah. And that was it. You weren't, no one really was really going to booze at all for something to eat, because it felt like it was more hassle to do those type of things than not, because you know you can only sit there, you got to sit down for an hour, you have food with your pint and all that type of cake. So it was all that type of stuff. So if it did feel a little bit different, it felt like we were like in a camp, and I think that brought the togetherness of the group even more so. The first game back, we went up to Shildon. It was an away game, no fans, literally just players. They were told we were only allowed so many staff. We were only allowed like the chairman, the secretary, and one other member of the board, and all that type of cable. And we went up to Shildon, and we got absolutely battered. We got battered. Honestly, I think any cup game, any cup competition that you've ever won over the years, whether you've been a kid or an adult, I think you look back at, there's always been one game where you think we were lucky to get through that, and that was definitely ours, Shildon. Podge made a great save. Well, he made a number of great saves in the game. He saved the penalty during the 90 minutes. Finished equal, and then we went on to penalties, and we won on penalties. Then we had a couple more games from North East teams. We played West Auckland, then got through that. And we were just starting to build momentum, and the feeling around the group, you could almost feel like it, not necessarily thinking about Wembley or winning it at that point. It was just like it almost became everyone's release, because like I said, like everyday life was just shit. It was shit, wasn't it? It was no other way to say it. Everything was just a little bit shitter than what it used to be. You know, even going to work, you'd almost like hate going to work even more, because you thought, I can't do nothing when I come home. And obviously we built it. There was lads sort of coming back from fitness. We played Longridge at home. Went 1-0 up in about 7 minutes. Got a man sent off a minute later. Came to them and got sent off a minute later. So we literally played the full game, 80 odd minutes, 90 minutes with 10 men. Managed to come through the game 2-1. And kept moving forward. The quarter final was a big game. We played Hebburn, and that they'd won the competition the year before. Yeah. Well, the week before for last seasons, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, like I did, like the delayed final thing.
So we were meant to be playing them on the Saturday, and they were in at Wembley on the Monday, on the bank holiday Monday. So they actually moved the quarter final to the following Saturday. Yeah. Which probably helped us, because I think they were all pissed for 3 or 4 days after they won the final. So they almost played last year's final on the Monday, and then travelled up towards the players on the Saturday.
Being mad to deal with that mentally, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think there's 2 elements of it. There's the elements of you've been pissed for 3 days, 4 days, whatever it is, and trying to get physically right to try and compete in another big game. Sometimes when you win a game with footy, it doesn't really matter, does it? You know what I mean? Yeah. You've got that sort of behind you where you've won. You just won at Wembley. There's no more sort of confidence that you can have than that. Yeah. But anyway, we won the game, moved on to the semi-final. Luckily enough to have another home draw. Played Walsall Wood in the semi-final. Another close game. Again, come through that. And obviously that feeling at the end, really, when that full-time whistle went, was just something else. I think certainly for me, it was more a relief than anything, because, like I said, because of the lockdown and all the issues that we were having with lockdown, I just felt that from a family point of view, all I was doing was work footy, and everything was just about the Vase and thinking about next Saturday, and everything we need to do beforehand. And we hadn't had any fans. At this point, there was still no fans, so it was almost like, your partner, your kids, family, they can't actually come and watch the games, and you're going through this roller coaster by yourself or with the lads, and there's nothing around. And obviously we've been told before that if the final was on such a date, there would be some fans allowed. So when that full-time whistle went in the semi-final, it was almost like massive release to think like we can actually go and not just do something special in terms of getting to Wembley, but actually share it with friends and family. I think it was massive. I think that was a massive feeling for us. I
always remember it was like there was games of footy happening and people could go into like the clubhouse and watch, but they had to close the blinds to the pitch because it had to be watched on the telly. Yeah, that was one of the fucking mad rules that they had.
There was all kinds of stuff that come in at different points, wasn't there? I think I don't know who was thinking that. It was like a social experiment, wasn't it? Yeah. You can't come up with the fucking craziest idea and watch people doing it. But yeah, that semi-final was something else. I think just getting through that was, you'd almost felt like you'd won the competition by then because you're thinking it's about going to Wembley. It's just an experience that obviously a lot of people want to try and achieve.
Before we touch on the Wembley and the feelings and that, just the side you had that year going to Wembley, tell us about that, because you had some special players in it, didn't you? Like even players now who have actually signed a professional clubs off the back of it and stuff.
Yeah, so obviously the standout one's Elliot Nevitt in terms of where he is and what he's achieving now. But our the attacking players we had on that side were frightening. With Elliot Nevitt, Kane Drummond, who's still at Rylands now, and we had Steve Milne as well. So raw pace, power. They had a little bit of everything, bit of horribleness, no technique. It was really, really good attacking intent. Midfielders wise, we would normally play with the likes of Sam Sheen, likes to get stuck in, puts his body in. Joe Coveney was like a Rolls Royce. He was came through the ranks at Man City, signed pro at Forest, and then dropped into non-league. He's out in Australia now at the minute, playing up there. Unbelievable player. Charlie Doyle, who was massive legs, technically better than what people give him credit for, but loads of legs, got about the pitch, won the ball back, loads of turn, won loads of sort of regains. And then obviously defensively, we were really strong and solid defensively. It was what we always tried to build on. I think throughout the seasons, if you look at the number of clean sheets the club kept and the side kept over the different years, I think it was 24 clean sheets in the first season. It was the cornerstone of what we wanted to try and achieve. Obviously, we wanted to play attacking football and be progressive, but it was always about trying to keep them out the other end as well. Club captain Gaz Kenny, I always said that the day I retired, because I don't think I could ever replace him. He was that good. The way he read the game, I've still never seen him lose a header to this day. And he was exceptional, a massive leader for us. And then obviously in goal we had the crazy man in Podge. Everyone needs one, don't they? And it's normally the goalie. Normally the goalie, like so. Yeah, so we had some good characters in there as well. I think that's what people probably don't see from the outside looking in. People see good players, you know, players who are easy on the eye, players who will score goals and whatever, and they're the names. But the characters in the dressing room were massive. They were massive.
For a run like that, you obviously need a good dressing room, don't you?
Yeah, you do. And look, I think like I said, because there was nothing else to do, it was a little bit like the crazy gang. You know, we're going up to buses to Newcastle and the North East on a Saturday or a Tuesday night or whatever, and then on the way home, like, you could have a bevy, and then you got off and there was no pubs open, there was nowhere to go. It was like, what do we do now? You know what I mean? Like, you could go around the block again a few more times. But yeah, I think that's what built the group. Like I said, it did feel like we were on a camp. It felt like we were on some kind of international camp. We felt very much in our own little bubble, and it really brought out a lot of the characters and some of the crazy cats that we had in the group.
Obviously, with the times that it was in, so with COVID and stuff, did you have to be tested or anything before all the games, or was it just crack on?
Yeah, we had to be tested before a few of the games. Obviously, lads were back in work to an extent. Well, some places were open, some places weren't, so they were obviously being tested depending on what they were doing for a living as well. But we had to test ourselves before we left for Wembley. On the morning, the day before, we were travelling up. We were doing some training at Derby County's ground, and then travelling up, staying overnight. And obviously the game was 12 o'clock, of course, 12 kick off the next day. So we all had to test ourselves. The swabs went like a little bit wide at the mouth before they went in the testing tube on that Friday morning. There was no way anyone was missing that game.
Yeah, imagine that though. Actually, you're doing the test and then finding out you're positive and just not being able to go.
No, there was no way that was happening.
The build up to it, the build up to Wembley, was that like surreal? Was it more like I said it to Macca, didn't I, when we were talking about the FA Cup, because obviously the FA are involved and the telly's involved, so we're all like, regimented as to what you can and can't do and what you...
Yeah, so the build-up obviously started at the full-time whistle of the semi-final. Now, because of what had happened with Hebburn and the match being rearranged, you normally get 2 weeks from at least 2 weeks from the semi to the final, because our quarter-final being pushed back and then our semi pushed back. We only had a week. Yeah. So the week was absolutely manic. On the Monday, on Sunday was a write-off, as I'm sure you can imagine. On the Monday, we met at the club, and literally as we were working through looking at options for hotels, we got an email off the FA to say, I think it'd almost been whispered anyway that it was going to happen. Basically, we're amalgamating the 2 seasons and we're going to do points per game, and we've been promoted. And it was like, oh yeah, great, okay, right, now where are we staying, what are we doing? And it was literally the shortest lived promotion celebration I've ever fucking known, you know what I mean? It was just like, right, I'll sound okay, let's just concentrate on what we've got to do. We went up, and to be fair, the club pulled out all the stops. We were staying at the Grove in just outside Watford, and it was the hotel that England normally use when they're playing internationals. It was unreal. It was well too good for us, you know what I mean? We all turned up like a gang of scousers and manx all rocking up, you know what I mean? It was like £600 a night hotel. Which was quite...
The stories down there must have been looking, thinking, what's going on
here? But they definitely were the night after the Wembley, I don't know that. But yeah, we rocked up, and to be fair, the club basically said, obviously there was a lot of money on the line in terms of competition payouts and the prize money, and the club basically said, you know what, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We're not going to try and save this money towards anything else. Let's go and enjoy ourselves. Whatever we win, we'll spend a lot. Yeah. And we definitely did that. Definitely did that.
Speaking, I know you touched on Elliot Nevitt as well, before we go into the Vase and winning it and stuff. Did you know when watching him throughout that season that he was probably too good for that level?
Yeah, he had a lot of raw attributes and a lot of skills that are very transferable up the leagues. There was certain parts of his game that he needed to work on. We worked with him quite closely on them. I think he'll probably admit it himself when he come back just before the Shildon game. We were sort of going through that mini pre-season. He wasn't in a good shape at all, you know, in terms of physically fit. In terms for football, he wasn't in a good place. His brother does quite a lot of bodybuilding, and I think he'd been doing weights with him, quite heavy weights, and we sort of did a little bit of a fitness test on the first day back and said, like, let's see where people are. Did a little 12-minute run, and Elliot pulled up and his back was killing. I said, what have you been doing? He's like, I've been fucking deadlifting 200 kilos. I was like, well, you know what I mean? Like, before we go and play footy, like, you're deadlifting like near enough a quarter of a metric ton. Your back's going to be fucking sore, mate, you know what I mean? So, but like, he's a great lad. He's one of the best lads. He wants to win. He's got a desire to improve and better himself, and I think if you look at his physique and his ability and how much he's changed since going into that full-time environment, it's massive. But I'd like to think that we played a part in getting to the point where he could go and achieve that as well, in terms of just some coaching, some simple stuff that we went through with him. But look, what he achieved in that final at Wembley, he was always going to get some kind of move. That was, you know, we walked into the changes at the end and we was like, he's definitely gone, and it was like, yeah, he's gone. He's already stood on the side thinking, I've got to find a new striker now. No, I think at that point it wasn't. It hadn't quite hit home, yeah. Like I said, the last sort of 6 minutes, I think I had the time at the end of it, that felt like an eternity. It was a horrendous feeling, but then obviously once it's done, it all sort of fades away, doesn't it? You can't really remember too much about the game and whatever, but I think we said, between the staff and whatever, we said straight after the game, he's gone, definitely gone. And good luck to him. I think at the time in the new Wembley, he was only the second person or the only two people who'd ever scored the hat-trick at the new Wembley was him and Harry Kane. Yeah. So he's not in bad company, is he? You know what I mean? He definitely wasn't going to be playing for Rylands the year after.
Remember he put that picture.
Wasn't you there when he first played as a striker as well? Because he was a centre half, wasn't he?
So when we were in college, he used to be a centre half. Yeah. So saying to Dave before we went, and like first year he was like a kid, and he was just dead small, dead skinny kid. And then we went for the summer and then come back in the September and come back and he was massive, this big unit, and you look and you're just thinking, is he the same kid? And then randomly just on one day he just said, put me up front. Went up front, and then obviously he's never looked back.
Yeah. I think he could do a job different. Like I said, he in terms of the attributes that he was intelligent and he had a good footballing brain, which is always transferable to playing in different positions. Obviously the physique he had anyway, he was physical, he was strong, he was aggressive, so whether you're playing up top or the centre half, there's a lot of same traits and skills that you're looking for.
I remember seeing that picture that he put up on Instagram straight after the game, and there's like his man of the match champagne, the ball, and something else, and it must have got over like 1 million likes or something like that. It was like unbelievable picture to see, especially when you know him as well.
I still think the best bit was when he swore on BT, live on BT. I think that was the best when he's fucking something or fucking something else. It was just that's just typical Elliot, you know what I mean? It was I think that's the beauty of it as well, as obviously being on BT and being a showcase at Wembley. It shows how raw it is as well, and these are real lads, you know what I mean? It's not usually when someone swears on the telly, they're like, oh, sorry, and he just I don't even think he realised. I think the amount of messages he had when we got back to change, he's like, lad, you just swore on BT.
On to the Vase then. Talk us through that day, because obviously, what was it like first for you as a manager walking out at Wembley with your side?
I think the whole experience, literally from being at the club on the Friday to obviously the end and certainly the party after it was probably the best experience in my life, taking away obviously the family type activities, you know, daughter being born and whatever, but it was the best experience in my life. It was fucking unreal. It really was. Obviously leading the team out was massively proud moment for me. Like I said, we worked our bollocks off to get there, and like I said, you'd almost felt like for long periods of time it was always get to Wembley, and then when you got there it was like, no, we've got to win it. There's no point just coming here. You've got to win now. And then it was almost like, cause no one puts any more pressure on you than you put on yourself. I'm sure you've both been in that situation where you just want to do the best you can all the time, and to lead the lads out was an unbelievable feeling. And then obviously through the game, obviously I felt quite comfortable through the game. We went 1-0 up, pegged back, 2-0, 2-1 up. Half time, then we scored the third goal. I thought, this is us, because defensively we're solid, you know, we're not going to concede, and then we conceded another goal, and it was like, fuck, this is going to be horrible. And then there was 20 minutes or so and we sort of just looked quite comfortable. We looked a bit of a threat on the break, quite comfortable. They had quite a lot of the ball in that sort of spell of the game, and then the last 6 minutes, as soon as I seen him put over 6 minutes, and I was like, oh no, I can't last 6 minutes. And then I think there's an element of you don't know what to do with yourself, and literally as I'm stood in the technical area on my own, I was like, look down, there's literally a fella with a camera like 3 yards away just pointing at my face, and I'm thinking, oh my god, I'm going to be live on BT fucking swearing or doing something stupid in a minute if we concede. So if we fucking concede, I'm going to hit the fucking volume. But you know, I think, look, the lads sorted it out, and that feeling at the end, I've still never actually watched it back.
I remember watching it. I watched the game, and obviously after it, I don't know why you remember too much of it, but I always, you and your staff, you didn't actually like, obviously all the lads were bouncing up and down, but you looked like you was more asked about the fact, like your family and that in the crowd and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You got your daughter up the crowd, didn't you?
Yeah, it's hard to get my daughter, because she was crying her eyes out. She was saying like to my mum and my dad and whatever, saying, oh, you know, what happens if daddy doesn't win, what happens if daddy doesn't win? And when we did, she was so relieved, she was crying her eyes out, she was like literally like in floods of tears. So I was trying to get her out the crowd to obviously settle her down a little bit, but that's the thing that people don't get, like non-league and grassroots. It's not just you, it does impact your family and whatever, and I know that a lot of the time, like the girlfriends and all that, they'll pretend they're not interested, but it's a big part of your life, isn't it? And it does involve people, and obviously when we went on that type of journey that we went on, the amount of support that we got was unreal. I think the club sold about 1,600 tickets. I think there was probably about 4,000, 5,000 people in there at the time when we kicked off, and probably another 1,000 or so by the time we finished, because obviously the FA trophy's on after the Vase, so you start to get like the Hereford and the Hornchurch fans coming in as well. So the noise was just something else. The noise was fucking. I was screaming at the right back, and he couldn't hear me. You know what I mean? But
some ground as well, innit?
I've never known anything like it. Obviously, being like big grounds, Goodison, Anfield, Old Trafford, and that over the years. But Wembley's just something else. We literally, after obviously we got changed and whatever, and having a bevy in the changing rooms, which were fucking massive as well, by the way. We come out, we were literally walking for 10 minutes. We asked, like, we were trying to meet in the pub, we were trying to meet family and friends, and he said, oh, you have to go down here. So we were literally walking. I didn't realise we were walking here for about 10 minutes, and we were still inside the ground underneath. And because we were walking from one end of the ground to the other, to where that end of the pub was, where the pub was. But it was like, fucking hell, we were still in the ground here, you know. We're still actually in the ground, but yeah, it's an unbelievable stage, and the pitch, everything about it was just something else.
It's massive when you're actually, like, you're in the stand watching. It must have been fucking unbelievable from the side. And
there's no end to it. It doesn't, like, you're looking up and you're thinking, fucking hell, like, where's the top? And some of the pictures, it was weird how fast the day went. So obviously we've been preparing for it. We got to the hotel on the Friday after training at Derby, just did like a little bit of shape work, a little bit of ball work, trying to relax the mood a little bit at Derby. Drove down to the hotel, and then before we went for something, so we actually did all the prep for the next day. So we actually told them the team, we told them set piece routines, what we were doing, went through the full repertoire of what you'd normally do on a match day. We did it on the day before with the intention of going through the same again, just to give those messages a little bit more time to sink in. And literally when we got to Wembley, we got there about 2 hours before kick-off. And by the time we'd been out and just like fucking stared at the seats for what felt like 5 minutes, we come back in, it was like, fucking hell, we're going to be out on the pitch in 15 minutes to warm up. The lads hadn't even started getting changed yet, so literally it was a good job we went through the information the day before, otherwise they wouldn't have known. It's just been like, go on lads, get out, my Bassett style.
Is that like all regimented as well? What time you've got to be out on the pitch to warm up?
Yeah, so we literally got a sheet that basically said T, like 0 minutes kick off, T minus 1 minute national anthem, T minus 3 minutes stood there, T minus 5 minutes stood at checkpoint 1, T minus whatever. So it was massively minute by minute regimented from 45 minutes before kick off.
All that on national telly as well.
Yeah.
Was that different as well, playing obviously the biggest game of their lives, biggest game for your managerial career, and it's under the cameras as well? You know, everyone at home couldn't make you or watching you, could be scrutinising it, etc, etc.
Yeah, I think it was, and what probably made it a little bit more sort of, it made you realise how big and how important it was. Obviously we did quite a lot of, as much as we could, analysis on our position before we went into big games. When we went into the quarter final against Hebburn, because they played at Wembley on the Monday and we recorded obviously the game, to be able to see the game from so many different angles from BT cameras, compared to what you normally see where you stood there with the notebook writing the stuff down and trying to take videos with your phone, I think that made you realise, fucking, this is big, you know what I mean, in terms of seeing how you prepare for those different games. And obviously you're aware of that you're on BT, it's something that you're talking about when you're going into the game, but as soon as you start going through the prep and the detail, all your focus is on the match and making sure the lads have got all the information they need.
What are you like as a manager then? Are you a shouter, or are you like calm, collected, just take it in, or?
Probably I can be quite animated, I think, on the sideline in terms of shouting and passing instructions on. I think a lot of it will depend on the group that you've got in terms of trying to change your response. For them, I think at Rylands we've always had quite a young group, and sort of when I was sort of playing, you know what I mean, you always had those experienced leaders, those lads who were horrible to, you know, and they didn't shut up for 90 minutes, and you're walking off thinking, now I'd rather be sat with my bed than this, you know what I mean? But
get a break.
That's a skill set that's gone in the game now. No, like that's not a value, you know, when you go and watch a game at the park, or you know, here or whatever, and you hear someone talking, like, people don't value that as a skill set anymore in terms of passing that information on. I end up fucking screaming man on and open up, and you know, it's more instructional than anything else. And but I think the more experience you get, the more games you get under the belt, you do change your approach. Obviously I'm not saying that you don't start screaming on and shouting at the players and whatever, they're trying to get the best out of them, but you get more into the game in terms of a technical and tactical point of view, rather than just screaming at people to be better.
Did you feel like then the last season after the Vase at Rylands there was even more pressure on you? So obviously you've been promoted, you just won the Vase, everyone's eyes pretty much in the city was on this side that were doing bits.
Yeah, there was an element of that. I think obviously there was a lot of pressure, but like I said before, I think the biggest pressure we've ever had is what we've put on ourselves. Obviously you know what you think you know what you're capable of, and you know how hard that you work, so you want to just try and achieve what you can. I think going back on some of the stuff I talked about in terms of the prep for the Vase, when we came back to training in the March, when everyone else got told basically that the league was over, we knew that obviously all we were concentrating is next Saturday, the Vase, and then obviously it took us about a week to get over that in terms of the party and the hangover from that. So when we come back, it was almost like right next season now. A lot of teams had been speaking to players for 3 months and nail people down in terms of contracts and agreements and whatever else. So we always knew going into that season, almost like our strategy for recruitment was around, we'll bring a couple of players in, but we'll have to build as we go. So there might be maybe 1 or 2 players coming in every sort of month or two. And that's what we did. I think we hung in there. We were always in the sort of the playoff spots early doors. A couple of bad performances, a couple of bad results as you'd expect, a couple of good ones as well. Then we brought a couple of players in sort of late December going into early January that probably transformed us quite a bit. We completely changed our playing style and philosophy. It was probably in the October on the back of a bad run. Changed our formation, we changed to a back 3 from a back 4. And we started to put some of the building blocks together in terms of what we wanted to do and what we wanted our identity to be going forward. And then, like I said, when those players with a little bit more quality and a little bit more experience became available, sort of January time, we brought them lads in and they made a massive difference, and they bought into what we were trying to do from a coaching point of view. And I think the recruitment at that point was a little bit more targeted as opposed to just getting a good player, get a good player who plays the way you want him to play. You know, when we were fortunate in some ways that obviously things didn't work out for certain players or other clubs. You know, like your Dean Fairmans, who we signed for Malty. So that's got 58 international caps. He played most of his sort of career in the Championship and League One. And bringing someone like him, and he just revolutionised the group. It just really transformed the way that we wanted to play. Obviously, he's one of those type of players who's really technical and good on the ball. And I think from January, I think we won 14 out of 17 games, sort of in the run into the league. And obviously, the last game was a draw, and that was a roller coaster in itself in terms of that last game, and we had to win it to win the league. But we went in and literally from January, I think it was the 1st January the 1st or 2nd, we played Widnes away, and we literally scored in the 97th minute. And then from that point, we literally went on a run of winning 14 out of 17.
Sometimes you need that as well, don't you? You know, like a last minute goal. So you come back in, everyone's fucking hyped and all, and you think, yeah, we can actually play football. We can actually do something. Yeah,
it was, and in that run, I think the thing that sort of built the confidence, it was we had games in that run where we were winning 1-0 and we scored literally a last kick winner. We had games where we went and blew teams away 6-0, 5-0, 7-2, and then obviously we had games where, you know, we scored like a 70-minute penalty and we were hanging on for dear life in the last 5 minutes. Yeah. And I think when teams are picking up points week in, week out, and they're picking up 3 points and winning games, if they're doing it in a variety of different ways, I think it gets the players confidence that they can deal with any type of situation. You know, because you can see it an early goal, and all of a sudden teams go, we've only, for the last 10 games, we've only been winning. So it's a different experience, and I think the more of those experiences you can come to, the better the team is and the better the group is.
So when you think back now to everything that you achieved at Rylands, did you expect to achieve that much, like so many promotions, winning at Wembley and stuff like that?
No, I don't think you can ever expect to do those type of things. I think what you expect of yourself is to put the things into place, or the building blocks into place, the sort of organisation, the coaching, the plans, all that type of stuff that we try to do. I think you're always trying to, I always say to the lads that we want to try and act with the level we want to be at, not act at the level that you're at. And I think if you're doing that sort of, and look, obviously it's got to be relative because your contact time with the players is sort of 2 hours a week in training, not, you know, you haven't got them full time. So, but things like opposition reports, plans on a match day, spending time doing set pieces, all that type of stuff, it does all add up. And obviously the more and more professional you can make it, the better. But I don't think we ever expected to achieve everything we did. We just went out and sort of looked at the game by game and tried to win every game that we played.
Obviously, you're not there anymore. We'll go into politics and all reasons why. Is it? We were speaking before, weren't we, about not being in footy?
Yeah.
Is it tough being out of it?
Yeah, we had to fell off with it a little bit. Like I said, because you're talking about obviously promotions and Wembley and all that, but take all that stuff away from it, it's kind of a little bit irrelevant whether you're being successful or not, or if you're any good or not. It's how much effort and work you put into something. Yeah. And then when that's not there anymore, it is tough to adjust. Obviously, when you're working through it, you know that you're spending a lot of time. You're probably thinking, I probably need to not have a night off tonight and go out with the birds and all that. Or I need to try and do some of my day job or whatever it is. But and you're always obviously conscious of that in terms of getting the right balance. But when it's not there anymore, that's when you really notice it. Yeah. And it's not just the contact time. So obviously, when you're having staff meetings, when you're having training sessions, when you're having prep for games, when you're having the games itself, the pint after the game, it's not just that the contact time, it's the constant thinking. Do we play him or do we play in? Do we switch to shape? Do we play a different way? How are we going to stop their centre forward who scored 25? It's all that type of stuff that suddenly that's not there anymore. And
it's mad that it's not gradually.
It's literally gone overnight. Yeah. And like I said, it was a disappointing end to the way that things sort of went about, and at the back end of sort of start of the season, at the back end of the Rylands journey. But I've always said to obviously the players that we had there and to the staff that were there as well, that look, we just need to look back at the 4 years we had in terms of the positives and almost discount the way it ended.
Yeah. Is there a level that you're looking at and thinking that's the level I want to go back in, or you're not asked?
Obviously, I want to try and challenge myself at a level, and whether that's the level that they've just left, one above, one below, that sort of level. Yeah. I think obviously you're always mindful of your own journey. I wasn't a pro footy player, so you can't start going in and demanding that you get a job in Conference North, Conference, that type of stuff. Yeah. So you've got to earn your stripes in a different way, obviously. So I'm more interested in the project and the club than the league. It to a degree. Obviously, you want to be part of something where the club's ambitious, where they've got half these facilities, where they want to try and improve and better themselves, and you want to go in there into a club that's got the same mindset as you and the staff that you want to take in. So that's probably the more important than the level they're at now. But obviously, you do want to try and test yourself as well.
I've started the question for a while in my head.
We'll go when you're looking at obviously a new club and stuff. Do you not think that even higher up than what you've been in would take a punt on you, given the success you've had at at the bottom of the pyramid and what you've done? Do you not think a club would look at you and think, where have I punt this?
I think possibly. I mean, I don't know. I think in non-league you go through stages, don't you, where you're seeing trends with recruitment in terms of managers and stuff, and you'll see teams where they're going out and recruiting that ex-pro footy player who played in the Championship or played in the Prem, and they might be really good at what they do in terms of management, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you've got those transferable skills. But obviously clubs do want, at this level, any type of big name or any type of attraction where you're bringing another 50 people through the gate. That can be a big difference to any club. So I think there's an element of clubs will always try and bring in the right person, but sometimes the priorities can be different depending on where the club's at. I'd like to think that someone will take a punt on me at some point and on the staff as well, but you've just got to wait and see what happens. And like I said, the challenging thing is with football, for you to get a chance, someone's got to lose their job, and at some point, somewhere along the line, I know it might be the fact that someone's moved to a new job, but someone's losing a job somewhere along the line. So it's quite a challenging thing, because obviously football at non-league level is like a bit like a family, you know what I mean? You do help each other out and sort of pass information, talk about players and whatever. So the thought of someone losing their job's not particularly nice, but I am desperate to get back in.
You've built yourself like a backroom staff, haven't you, in terms of Rylands? Were they massive in terms of across the 4 years and stuff? Yeah,
of course. I think obviously you need people you can trust in any walk of life, don't you? You know what I mean? You surround yourself with good people and you get good things. We had some great staff. Obviously Fraser Fraser Ablett was with me from the very start, from day one, as an assistant manager. Really good coach. He's obviously learnt on the job like myself in terms of the management side and the assistants to that side. But he was been massive across the whole journey. We were really lucky to bring in a lad called Tim Lees as one of our coaches. Tim's background, he's sort of been at Wigan, Watford, Liverpool, so we were really lucky to have him. He'd moved over to the States to coach a pro side over there, and then he'd come back because obviously sort of family life and whatever else, so he'd come home, and the job that he had, sort of normal job, so to speak, he couldn't, when he was going in sort of full-time work at clubs, the money just not fell out of football. It's sort of League 1, League 2 level, so it was an element of where he saw himself in terms of a career, so we were quite lucky to get him in. He revolutionised the way that we thought about sort of coaching and moving things forward. And then we had other lads in, like Jack Hawke, as a junior coach who was still learning his trade, and he's moved on leaps and bounds. He's gone into Skem now as a first team coach. We had Mike Smith, who's also at Skem as an assistant manager. Dave Hughes, who did a lot of the analysis and a lot of the coaching around set pieces. So he's just got a job at Everton, doing some analysis at Everton. So Aaron Cameron, goalkeeper coach, he's doing Everton 18s and 23s. So the calibre of people that we had in and around the staff at the time was through the roof.
If there was something, so obviously coming from the back end of playing at Widnes, just like helping out with the gaffer and that, to now, is there anything you look back on and you think, I wouldn't have done that, or I should have done this differently, or anything like that?
I don't think so. I don't look at
any regrets type of thing.
I don't think so. Look, obviously there's certain things I wish I might have done differently or whatever, or might have gone a different way. But every defeat you ever have, you always wish you'd have picked a different team or done about it a different way. But I think we always said that when you do lose games, and we did have a couple of defeats where you're losing like 3-0 and things have just gone drastically wrong on that day. I think we've always said that always treat any defeat like a lesson and do it, sort of a forensic review. What happened on that day? Why did something go so wrong? Why did we lose a game of football? And obviously trying to improve. Sometimes the answer was it just happened and they were better on the day. There's nothing you can do. But sometimes we made changes on the back of it, whether that be personnel, shape, formation, the way we played, whatever it was, or preparation for games, the warm up, little things like that you try and look into. So I don't think there's any massive regrets. Like I said, there's obviously made mistakes, plenty of them, whether that be selection or decision making that I made myself. But it makes you what you are, don't you? You've got to learn from those things. Yeah, sometimes it does. And look, it's hard when things aren't going your way and you're going through a tough spell, but that's probably what makes you.
We always usually finish. So any young coaches who are listening, any advice for them, like starting off in football, or anyone who's out there struggling? Have you got any advice that you'd pass on or anything like that?
Just work your nuts off and do it your way. Look, ultimately, you know, some people will be successful, some people will fail, but be true to yourself and just do things your way. And if that's not good enough for the club you're at, then you'll get an opportunity somewhere else. But don't try and be someone else. Don't try and be something that you're not.
Yeah.
Safe for them.
Yeah. Listen, I know when we first started this, we were asking people who do we get on and stuff like that, and your name come up loads. And when you come in, I appreciate you said it's not your type of thing, so we really appreciate you coming on.
No, cheers,
nice one.
Appreciate it.
How you doing? If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to give a like and subscribe. Do go and check out AFC Knowsley and get some of this merch. Mike will be very happy if someone goes and buys some merch. It's on the AFC Knowsley website. But if you're listening on YouTube, do leave a like and a subscribe. Spotify and Apple, do leave a rating for us. It's absolutely flying. Reached Azerbaijan and America. Doing quite well, and Saudi Arabia as well. So must be listening to us before like all the World Cup and that kicks off, Jay. But yeah, nice one for coming on. Nice one for listening, everyone. And yeah, you for listening from the side, and we'll be back again next week.